Cornish culture, actual in everyday knowing you were Cornish, that didn't really exist then. There weren't. We didn't have Parents and Parents' Day. We hardly ever. I don't know if you did see a flag. I don't know if I knew it. There was a Cornish flag. Um, we never had any Cornish pride in the same way. Everybody was the same around you. We kind of grew up with the people and stayed with the people. People didn't move around like they do now. So you grew up in a quite a different culture altogether. Like I said, now people are much more transient. They move away for work, and I think I moved away from the village because I joined the Merchant Navy straight from school, and I was just so unusual to, and nobody had, wasn't anybody else in the village who'd done that. And when I came back on leave, I was like something exotic because I'd been to South Africa or whatever. But I don't know. No, it's because people just didn't. Hardly anybody had a car for coming to that. It's absolutely true. On Sunday night, a chap said to me, "That song of yours, you should use it with the maybe in Kernow and get all these English out of Cornwall." I said, "I don't think so." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because a lot of my friends are English and they love Cornwall as much as I do." I said, "There are Cornish people who are making a profit out of Cornwall. They couldn't care less about Cornwall anyway. So it's not a fact of I'm not a nationalist in that way. I love Cornwall, and I love anybody who loves Cornwall. I don't care if you're from Greenland. If you love Cornwall and you're doing your best for Cornwall, that's good enough for me." And like I said, there are a lot of people within Cornwall who couldn't care less about it as long as they're making their money out of it. That's it. And people I know, there are people who are actually selling their version of Cornwall, and they couldn't care less for Cornwall at all. But it's good money. The only thing I didn't know, and that was from a teacher in my junior school, who told us the derivation of praise, that it was a meadow in the Cornish language, and that was the first time I ever knew there was anything like a Cornish language. Never gave any interest in mine, but I did know, and I remember him saying about it, telling us what praise meant in Cornish and Nancygal and local places as well, and realising that there was a language, but then languages never interested me. In fact, sadly, school never interested me very much, to be honest. We had the way it was, the school wasn't very interested in that I went to in praise, sadly, except for one term. Our headmaster got ill and was taken away, and we had a locum come and take his place, a young lad. Looking back, he was a young lad, and he was really good for that one term. He gave me my education. He gave me my interest anyway. You don't teach children things, you teach them to learn. And that's what he did. He inspired me to learn and go and find your own learning, if you know what I mean. And funnily enough, there's a school magazine or a school book they did some years later, and asked some of us old people for our memories, and I put that in that Mr. Thorne gave me my education. And there was another girl in the class, and I never realised, who said exactly the same thing. And independently, she didn't see mine to write that. I mean, she wrote the same, well, not the same words, but that he'd done the same for her, and gave her that lift. But my fault, I did not enjoy school at all. I enjoyed working, I enjoyed me fired in, and I enjoyed my freedom, and I didn't see much in school that compared with that, sadly. Because if I stuck to school, I think, I'm not daft, if you know what I mean. I wasn't daft then either, but I just didn't like it, and I didn't go to school very much at all. And especially my father died when I was 14, and my mother was left with 8 of us. I'm the eldest of 8. Um, Nobody bothered me after that. If I didn't go to school, they didn't bother me. They knew I was out working, helping the family in a way. And I didn't have my own money at all. My money went to my mother. As long as I had my tobacco, that was enough. I lived quite independently, and I had that independence. Even when my father was alive, it was not a problem. He was a bit like that, I think. I'd come out from school when we were in Cameron, walk around the corner, and there would be a lorry loaded with cauliflower, or broccoli as we used to call it back then. Father went in there, and we'd jump up in the lorry, and that would be it. We'd go off up to London, Bristol, or London, or Cardiff, or wherever he was going. And one of my friends would go and tell my mother, tell him Harry won't be home tonight. Call my father, and that was it. And sometimes, Father, we have gone up, we only had a short run up to Bristol or something. They dropped me off school next morning on the way down. And I wrote an essay one time. I remember that in school, I had to write an essay. I wrote this essay, and I remember the teacher saying to me, my God, he said, you've got some imagination. And that was that. But it wasn't imagination at all. I gave him a journey up and back. And I think there was an accident or something on the way up. And it all happened. What I told him was the truth. It wasn't imagination at all. That actually happened. It probably happened 2 or 3 days before, My grandfather was a groom. He retired from the post office. I think he was one of the last people to deliver mail on horseback. And when he retired from the post office, he became a groom to the Sims family. And Sims was a mining man, and the Sims Lode in Geever is named after him. And he lived at a place called Treville House at the top of Praise, quite a big house. And he had his own stables and things. And he had horses, and my grandfather used to look after them, and we used to go away to shows, because he used to show jump, he didn't show jump, his daughter did the show jumping, I think. Or he had somebody to ride for him, I'm not sure which. And we used to go away to shows with my granddad, and be sleeping between the horses, or they got like the horses here and the horses there, and then a piece in the middle with the hay and the straw and and we would just sleep in there and blanket over here, and that would be it. When I was about, I don't know what I've been, 10-year-old, I suppose, 9, 10, 11 years old. And people used to come into the village, Mr. Eathorne, and see him now. Saturday mornings, you hear clap, 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 and then Mr. Eathorne would come down the street with his little cart on the back for his chicken feed down at Kendall's store. I remember one time they challenged one of our local farmers, big old boy, to pick the pony off the floor, and he did. Got underneath the pony and lifted it up off the floor in the cart. Takes some doing when you think about it. Growing up down here, my father was a lorry driver, but also in the summer when there was no any lorry driving around, he'd be farming or farm worker, and I used to go out with him in the fields. And I remember being out there picking up stones or weeding anemones or planting cauliflower or something like that. And I used to say to him, you think I'm going to be here picking up stones when I leave school? You got another thought coming, I'm going on one of those boats. I'm going to go and see the world. And that's what I did. So that's what inspired me, really, as much as that. And the reading. That's the thing that this Mr. Thorne told me, was reading. He used to read to us. Every day he would read a chapter from a book. And again, I would have been about 9 years old, I suppose. But he started reading Tom Sawyer, Mark Twain's dumpster, and he started reading that. And he left before we got anywhere into the book. And so I was so into it otherwise. So in the end, I managed to save up and buy the book. And I've been a Mark Twain fan ever since. I lived like Huckleberry Finn as a youngster from about 12 till I was 15 and a half and went away to school to, Gravesend, Merchant Navy College. I was like a Huck Finn going around. I was hard on the rabbits around our place for a number of years. I spent all my time ferreting or rabbiting, I had a bolt action 410 when I was about 12 gun, so yeah, it was quite a different from then. Nowadays I've been locked up. It would have been, no doubt about that, would have been locked up. The way we lived back then would have been locked up. I used to have a knife. I didn't have a sheath knife like most people had. I had a Brooklyn knife. When we were out one day somewhere, and I suppose the men had gone to lunch and just put their knives in there, usually just in the stomach of broccoli, just dig them in. With that, so, half-inch the knife when I was, again, I was 10, 12, 11, 12-year-old. And that was it. That was, you used to walk around with a great knife like that there, and a gun, and a ferret, and we're smoking, because I started smoking quite early on. And the rabbits and that paid for all that, They used to sell them. So I spent all my time, and I did really, there wasn't much else, rabbiting. When we were leaving school, they were taking on probably, 50 apprentices a year or whatever it was, so wasn't a problem getting a job. You'd go straight into Omens if you wanted to. Anne's brother, he went into Omens as an apprentice, became the top apprentice, and then went on to become production manager. And he ended up as the public relations manager, and he's the one who shut it down. One of the last ones to leave. He didn't shut it down, not personally, but he was one of the last ones because he was getting all the men up there. You ask any of the men who worked at Omens when they closed, and you ask him about Mike, Anne's brother, Mike Tredrasco, and he said Mike did his best to get us all jobs. I know at one time Mike was saying that, once they became American owned, and they did, they were asset stripped and dumped, and that's what's happening all the time, When they were just Omens, they were doing alright, but then things slow down and anything. Well, that's a better offer, and we'll sell out to them, well then they'll buy on to somebody else. And I'm pretty sure at one time he said that the Kellogg's were part owners or owners of Omens. It's all that the same company, like, what I mean. And they did. I mean, that's what's going on now. It's money talks, doesn't it? You just buy each other out and strip them down, and that's the end of it. You could end up with one big company owning the lot.
Amazon.
Because I didn't start out writing songs, I started out writing dialect verse. And I was working at the time, I'd been away hitchhiking around Europe. And I came back and I was going to buy a motorbike and go to India. And I met this young girl who kept me here. I didn't get to India. And I was working on a nursery, and around Christmas time especially, we used to cut metasporum to go in flowers, bunches of flowers in a tree with leaves, and we used to do this down at Townsend, and a guy there called Willie Ivy, lovely old man, he used to own these trees, and my boss at the time said to me, Harry, can you get Willie down one end and have a bit of chat with him so we can go on cutting these trees? Because Willie used to, don't cut too much of that, my boy. You're cutting too much of it. He cut up a bit higher, and they couldn't get on with the work. So he said, you keep Willie happy. So I did. And he used to tell the most amazing stories, and he had the loveliest of dialect, all the lovely old dialect words and that. And so I started writing dialect verse originally, and some of the stories that Willie had told me in the verse, and so even the dialect verse, some of it is true. So Willie Ivy was certainly one of them. Yeah, Willie was a rabbit trapper. That's what he did for a living. I had an uncle that did the same thing. Yes. Like I said, great for singing, not good for talking. That should be better for talking. Yeah.
Charlie.
Pardon?
You were talking about Charlie.
And Charlie and Willie, they were rabbit trappers. And you don't think of that being down here, do you? But that's what they did for a living. They set snares and traps, gin traps and that for rabbits. And then they used to be sent away up country on the train to the butcher shops all over the country. I can remember my Uncle Charlie, or great uncle he was actually, he was uncle to my father, my grandfather's brother, and see him walking out through the village with a bike, with rabbits all over, across handlebars, across the cross tail, across the crossbar, and on the back, rabbits everywhere. And he'd take them up just like that. They used to go on the train. Didn't know freezer or refrigerated boxes or bags or anything. They were just rabbits, and they were just put straight on the train. Braced up. That was it. Amazing, really. Well, that's what they used to do. Willie used to do the same thing. And another guy who was a real beaut too was Albert Williams. Albert Williams, he was called. He was another one who used to tell some great stories. The boss that he worked for at the time up in near Carnell Green said to him, he said, I want you to go down to Ale, he said, to get a bag of cement, or 5 bags of cement. He said, I want you to take a young horse, he said, and I want you to be very, very careful of it. Don't go racing that thing. Just walk on gently, because he's only a young horse, and you don't want to ruined or anything. And Albert said, well, it's fine. We went on down the hill, just walking on quietly, just lovely big trip down, a nice day, he said. He said, then we got down there, he said, we loaded the bags on, and he said, I was then coming up through, got onto the viaduct, he said, just there by the White Hart. He said, and the train went over the viaduct, and that, like, coming into the station, so he'd blowing the whistle, smoke, rattling, banging, the horse took off like a dose of salt, all up over Foundry Hill, and all the way up to Fradham, and by the time he got back to the farm, the horse was white with foam. He couldn't stop him. And he said the farmer chased him up the road with a stick for ruining his young horse. But I mean, the way he told it was, obviously it took about an hour. It's like me, he used to digress quite a bit. I'd come out of the merchant navy and was farming, and I was milking in a milking parlour, milking 120 cows twice a day. And a chap came to work at the milking parlour, and he was like my assistant, I suppose, really. And we've been friends ever since, Jonathan Ryan. And John had just got a guitar and was just learning to play. And that's when I got a guitar and started playing as well, because our love of music, we loved the same sort of stuff, and we'd sang to the cows every night. I used to milk on my own in the morning quite often, because John could never get out of bed. He lived in Isle, and by the time he got into work of a morning, I'd milked 120 cows, and I was just about ready to go home to have my breakfast and that, and he would end up doing all the dirty work. He had to clean the parlour, clean the yard, put the cows out on the field, and they would do all the hard work in a way. Because I love getting up in the morning. I've never been problem with me getting up. So I get up at 5, I'd be in there, 6 o'clock, bring the cows in, milk them all on my own, and off they go, you know, and he'd do all that. But in the afternoons, when the two of us were there milking, it used to take us 2, 3 times as long to milk the cows because we were singing all the time. And we were. You know, we could milk them in well, an hour and a half, I suppose, but quite often took us 2, 3 hours of milk because we were, you know, trying out different songs or whatever. You know, it's sad really, but that's what it's like when you're young. And we still occasionally play together now, John and myself. So good friends. He runs the folk club up at Four Lanes. John and Jill, him and his wife, yeah, they're very much into the folk music still. He's slightly different sort of folk music to me, if you know what I mean. And he's written some good songs too, good Cornish stuff. And
Yeah.
he's worth interviewing. Good old, well, yeah, he's written some nice stuff. Hey?
And he's getting into his Cornish culture late because he's learning Cornish now.
He's learning the Cornish language now. Yeah, I've never got into that. I've nothing against the Cornish language. Don't get me wrong. I was never a language person anyway. I'm so much better off now when we go over to France. I get away with it better than I ever did because I got this. You know, I walk in the shop and say, "Bonjour, madame, hello." It's okay. I speak a little English. Whereas Anne goes in there and they'll have her, she'll have to spell things down to the last detail, won't they?
Well, they won't
But
speak English,
they let me get away with it.
necessarily, yeah.
But, yeah, John and myself were the ones who I said to hitchhiked around Europe in 1974. Me and him were the two that hitchhiked around Europe together and took the guitars with us and that. Yeah, great fun. Busking down in Marseille and Aix-en-Provence. In fact, I was down and had a nice little stay in Aix-en-Provence tonight.
Yep.
Here a couple of 3 years ago. I broke my wrist. We'd gone back with a motorhome to Mont Saint Victoire, a mountain that I climbed in 1974. Stepped out of the motorhome, fell off the step, broke my wrist, and ended up in the hospital for 3 days.